Welcome back. We have all those flashes that are up for you on the screen on the Hindenburg Adani case. And Ashmit, who's been tracking that very closely, he's joining us to give us the latest on the verdict. Ashmit?
Well, this was the much-awaited order. The Supreme Court had reserved its judgment, and this was much awaited in terms of clarity on what perhaps the regulatory approach needs to be going forward. And what's interesting is that there are two very important takeaways. The first is the expert panel that has been constituted. It's a high-powered committee that has been formed. It has 5 members. It is headed by a retired judge. Let me take you through the composition of this expert panel. The expert panel includes former banker and SBI chief O.P. Bhatt, K.V. Kamath, Nandan Nilekani, lawyer Somsekhar Sundaresan, and it will be headed by Justice Sapre, a retired judge of the Apex Court. This is as far as the expert panel is concerned. It will be looking at essentially the extant norms on the issue of investor protection. The Supreme Court had made a note of how the fall in Adani prices had led to a vast amount of investor wealth erosion. So this is something that, in fact, the expert committee will be charged with. But importantly, that is not the only aspect that the Apex Court, in fact, is looking into. What's important is that the Supreme Court, by way of a very explicit order, has directed that the market regulator, SEBI, needs to, in fact, probe some very pointed questions that were raised in the Hindenburg report. Now, this is the second important takeaway. There are 4 key issues that have been highlighted. The 4 key issues include, number 1, minimum public shareholding norms. Number 2, Securities Act violations. Number 3, related party transactions, and number 4, manipulation of share prices. There's a very clear direction by the Apex Court for SEBI, the market regulator, to probe these allegations and to submit its report within 2 months' time to this very expert panel. So clearly, a 2-part order by the Apex Court, important in the Adani case.
Take that point, Ashmit, but just stay on with us because we are also joined by H.P. Ranina, who's the senior advocate at the Supreme Court. Joining us on the phone line, we have with us Abhishek Rastogi as well, who's the founder of the Rastogi Chambers, joining us, and Sanjay Dutt to give us, the market reaction on the same. Mr. Ranina, first, your thoughts on this 2-part judgment that has come in from the Supreme Court, the direction that they've provided, one, forming an expert panel, and secondly, directing the SEBI to look into the 4 charges which have been made by the Hindenburg report?
I think this is a very landmark judgment of the Supreme Court, because the impact of this judgment will be felt in many other cases in the future as well. So the first point is SEBI has been asked to find out whether there is any violation of the Security Contract Act or any other provision of the law. That is very important. Second is manipulation of prices. This is done to protect the interest of small investors and the public at large. So whether there's manipulation, this is something which is a very important point which the SEBI will have to go through. And maybe they may take they will take a little more time than what the Supreme Court has given them, and possibly they will have to put head to it and make sure that this manipulation angle is thoroughly probed. And then, of course, it will all go to the panel of experts which have been formed. Again, it's a very good step taken by the Supreme Court that it will be evaluated. Whatever findings of SEBI will be evaluated by an independent panel of people, and then the final report will come. So I think it's a wonderful judgment, and the Supreme Court should be commended for this positive step that they have taken.
Indeed, Mr. Ranina, I request you to hold on to that thought. And in fact, Ashmit has further queries for you as well. But for the time being, let's hop across to Mr. Sanjay Dutt, Director of Quantum Securities, who joins us. Hi, Mr. Dutt. Good morning. Could you tell us your first reaction to this particular verdict that's just come out, and how do you approach the stocks in the interim?
Nigel, thank you for having me on the show. I think the outcome is very positive of the deliberation the Supreme Court did, the arguments that have happened and what they finally pronounced. And I don't have much to add that as compared to what Senior Advocate Ranina has already said. But I just had one small bit to add here is that I'm glad something like this has come and we've got some decisive course of action, because we need to now take this off the public discourse, the political mudslinging, what debates we've had in the parliament, what we're having on social media. There's a lot of mind space and a lot of energies being wasted and misinformation that's being spread around. So this probably should now lessen that or put an end to it. I don't know. But I think a good part is that government can now, make it very clear to people that there is a Supreme Court appointed committee is looking into all these things. And of course, we've got eminent members like Som, Mr. K.V. Kamath, and I don't think you could have a better committee as what is Supreme Court said. And third most important is SEBI. In any case, is doing everything.
Right.
So I think SEBI is taking care of everything. So net-net, I think everything is positive from whatever has happened today.
Right. It's a fair point that you've made out there, Sanjay. We also have with us Mr. Abhishek Rastogi. He is, of course, the founder of Rastogi Chambers, legal luminary there too. Abhishek, your thoughts? I mean, what do you think is the next step from the Adani Group standpoint? What happens? What is the legal way forward for this?
So I think, first of all, we must, it's a commendable job. And today we are proud that we have strong judicial system. And when I say that, it has a lot of meaning, because today I think everybody's focus is on protection of investors. And when we have such a judicial system which wants to show transparency, mind you that there was a sealed cover which was given by the center to recommend names. But I think that was completely denied by the Chief Justice, and that shows that the Apex Court wants to very clearly show that the system must be transparent. And today we are proud, to learn that the appointment of this high-powered committee brings onto the table complete diversity. So I think if we look about the two broad fundamental aspects, the transparency and the diversity of this high-powered committee, I think it is a blessing for the investors, because at the end of the day, the investors will get confidence from the entire system. And when we talk about the violations and, guidelines to be framed by SEBI and with respect to manipulation of share prices, today, I think the investors will get a lot of confidence from this Supreme Court verdict, and I think which will be, in the long run, very encouraging. So I think as far as the next steps are concerned and the legal framework is concerned, this high-powered committee will get into the details of various aspects. We would not want to comment on those at this stage, but because there is a lot of diversity in this committee which is being formed, they would look at from 360-degree perspective. And I think that will boost industry confidence. That will boost even the investor confidence. And I think as far as Adani is concerned and as far as the fair play is concerned, I think today there is a fair play for all stakeholders, especially from the perspective of the investors. And I think that's why this decision is very, very key.
All right, Mr. Rastogi, thanks a lot for joining in with your initial thoughts on the same. In fact, on that note, we'll thank Mr. Ranina, Mr. Rastogi, as well as Mr. Dutt for joining in as well with their quick take, unequivocal about the fact that investor protection should be prime. So in case you've just joined in, the Supreme Court in its verdict so far with regards to the Adani-Hindenburg case has made two observations. The first, it's constituted an expert committee of Mr. O.P. Bhatt, K.V. Kamath, Nandan Nilekani, Somsekhar Sundaran, and this committee would be headed by Justice Sapre, who is the retired judge of the Supreme Court. The SEBI and investigation agencies will support the expert panel. Apart from that, they've also gone ahead and directed the SEBI into looking at 4 possible violations made by the Adani Group or alleged by Hindenburg itself. On that note, we will wrap up on this edition of Chartbusters. You stay tuned. Coverage will continue.